Welcome to Amidon Planet. I'm your host, Joel Amidon. Thank you for joining me in this never-ending quest to learn how to teach better. Today on episode 124 of the podcast, we have Dr. Jeff Rozelle and Dr. Jen Mosgrove of the Knowles Teacher Initiative. Jeff is president and CEO, and Jen is the director of the Teaching Fellows Program and is also a Knowles Academy instructor. I'm excited about Knowles. I'm excited, if you're not aware of Knowles, for you to become aware of Knowles. When I first became aware of Knowles, one of our teacher candidates here at the University of Mississippi, one of those teachers that you just, man, I cannot wait for them to have their own classroom. I cannot wait for them to start teaching math to the kids at our local high school. And she was selected as a Knowles teaching fellow and got exposed to that program. And through her relationship with me and our program, she recommended me to become a selector for the Knowles Teaching Fellowship. And I was like, okay, I guess I'll do that. But when I got to that selection weekend and I saw some of the teacher educators, the math teacher educators that I knew and respected there, I'm like, this must be something special. If they're inviting these folks that I admire into this space in order to help them select who they're going to have as teaching fellows, I was hooked. And so much so that now I'm even a member of the board of trustees for Knowles. And so I'm excited to share this conversation with Jeff and Jen as they talk about this unique phase in their Knowles, in the Knowles Teacher Initiative, in their program, in their programming, and the process they went through in order to take shape for these changes, in order to come up with the best ways that they know possible to support early career math and science high school teachers. So without further delay, here's my conversation with Jeff Rozelle and Jen Mosgrove. Jeff and Jen, welcome to Amidon Planet. How are y'all today? Jen,
good,
how are you? How are you?
Good. Good to be here. Thanks, Joel.
I always mess that up with two because I'm like, hey, everyone wants to talk at the same time, but thanks, Jen. And Jeff, how are you doing?
Doing great. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, this is great. I'm excited. I was thinking about this earlier, and just, we'll put a disclaimer out there. I'm on the Knowles Teacher Initiative board, and I'm very thankful for the opportunity to be on that board. But I think I'm a really good cheerleader. I'm a really good, I love what Knowles does. I love what you all do. I'm excited to get a chance to talk about what you all do and what you all have done over the last couple of years now. But and going to dive into that. But first, I want to get a little bit of background. So this is, again, one of the things about Amidon Planet I love is when people come to Amidon Planet, I get to have maybe conversations you might not normally have or ask questions you might not normally have. And I would like to know a little bit about how you got to where you're at. So little brief self-introductions, where your experiences in teaching that led you to where you currently are at Knowles. I don't know, who wants to kick us off here first? Let's see. All right, Jeff, you're
I'm
first.
happy to start. So right out of college, I became a teacher. So I was a high school chemistry and biology teacher in Cincinnati, Ohio, for 10 years in Cincinnati Public Schools, and loved the job and loved being a teacher. And I had great mentors who early on in my career tapped me to work on district initiatives and to start leading professional development for my colleagues and learning from them, who were, much more experienced teachers than mentors. I got to work with a lot of student teachers, and I kind of got the teacher education bug through that. And so after 10 years, went to graduate school and thought that my career trajectory was like yours, Joel, to be a university professor and work in a teacher education program. And I did that for a while. But I didn't love it as much as I thought I would. And Knowles offered me the opportunity that we'll get to talk about of working at a nonprofit who that centers teachers and centers working with teachers and has a mission that we were all pulling in the same direction for, and I was drawn to that. And so now 12 years ago, I came to Knowles, and have had a lot of different positions here. And the last few years have been leading the organization as president and CEO. And it's a place that I love, and I love the work we get to do. I love the colleagues I get to work with. It's just a group of people that just centers teachers in a way that I do think is maybe not unique in all the country, but certainly does it in a way that is unique and feels really special to me.
Yeah, absolutely. Jen, how about you? What's your story?
Yeah, so I came out of undergrad and went to Frederick County, Maryland to teach for a number of years, and had a very clear moment of realizing like there's got to be more. Something doesn't seem to be adding up when I realized like one of my top students from the previous year was struggling with the same thing that she had aced the year before. And so I was like, something's not right here. I need to learn more and understand more. And decided to go back to grad school to do that. And so I went to University of Pittsburgh and did my graduate work there. And through that, similar to Jeff, like fell in love with working with teachers and really helping teachers think about teaching and learning. And through that experience, my advisor, I had the privilege of working with Peg Smith, and she was giving a seminar for all of us who were close to defending and such of like what you can do post-graduation. And she had brought in the call for a program officer at Knowles as an example of something that wasn't the traditional academia trajectory, which is what I thought I was also going to be headed down. But I love the fact that this had a sustained focus on teachers over a number of years. And I applied 19 years ago and have been here since. And similar to Jeff, I've had multiple roles, and now I'm very excited to be directing the teaching fellowship program.
And let me say, the legend Peg Smith. Holy cow! Like, I mean, like for anyone in math ed, like that name should ring a bell. And if not, we'll do one of her books in the near future.
We should. Yeah. She was amazing. She was an amazing mentor.
Yeah. That's what they like at conferences. I remember like Peg. She would have like dinners, I think, with getting some of her folks together. So like, I was, kind of like looked at those with envy a little bit, but
we knew awesome. As grad students, once we were done, we had made it out of the graduate student realm when we were at those dinners and such with her.
Very nice. Very nice. Like, and that's cool. Like I mean, what a chance. Like, hey, here's an example. And like, no, that's not the example. That is the thing. And that's that's neat. That's awesome. So let's just get into it. So we're talking about Knowles. Like, so what is the Knowles Teacher Initiative?
Yeah, we're a private foundation that was started by Harry and Janet Knowles, who were entrepreneurs who started a business called Metrologic Instruments that they worked a lot of their careers in and then sold, and used the proceeds to start a foundation. And they had the dream of the foundation was to improve math and science education across the country by investing in teachers. And that was in 1999 when that started. And we really work as a nonprofit. We've got a number of different programs that we use to do that work. But the signature program is the program that Jen leads, which is our Teaching Fellows program, which supports new early career high school math and science teachers for 4 years in a long-term commitment to them. And then after that, they're supported for the rest of their careers in our Knowles Senior Fellows program. And then we have our own professional learning wing, the Knowles Academy, where we provide a bunch of free, really great professional development led by teachers, designed by teachers, for teachers all over the country. And so this is what we do: is we invest in teachers to help lead change across the country in math and science ed.
Yeah, Jed, it's kind of like what you're just talking about with PEG, where the fellows program, when you coming out of that 4 years, it's like you get to come to the table as a senior fellow, right? Like you kind of join that sort of cohort to and then, like Jeff says, continues on and on and on and on. That's pretty impressive. Like to have that professional network that you get to become a part of as a senior fellow.
We have Knowles Teaching Fellows from 2002 that continue to pour back into teaching fellows on a regular basis. So there were only 3 in that first year, all are still connected and involved, and some of them are really connected and involved. Serve in leadership roles, have helped us design some of our academy courses, mentor teaching fellows. So it really is a community that can be something that you're part of for your whole career.
Yeah, that's pretty impressive. I mean, and again, we'll promote this at the end or provide links in the show notes to some of the opportunities for professional development. And one thing I like about those courses that I share with some of my peers down here is, like, again, they're for teachers, and then a lot of times they're like timely. Like, you had one on AI recently where it's like people are trying to wrap their heads around. Well, what better than to talk to another teacher who's also trying to wrap their head around, and maybe it's just a little bit few steps ahead of you. And now that they're sharing things that they've learned, and now creating again a community where the people can exchange ideas and get better at teaching.
Yeah, in the case of that AI course, Joel, that came to be because we've got two Knowles senior fellows who this is the work they're doing. They're designing and using AI in professional learning opportunities for other teachers with kids. They're sharing about it, and so they didn't know each other particularly well, but we brought them together and supported them with our staff to design some of this professional learning. And like you said, it's been incredibly popular at NSTA. It was a standing room only presentation because teachers are they're desperate to try to figure out what's going on with this.
Yeah, not just being scared to death about it. Yeah, like, hey, no, here we go. Let's figure this out. Jen, anything you wanted to add about Knowles? I mean, again, you've been there for 19 years. I write that down. 19 years. Yeah. Like, anything else that something that makes Knowles a special place for you?
Yeah, I think just kind of touching on what you all were saying, just that it's amazing to be a part of an org that empowers teachers so much and really believes in teachers and their knowledge and what they can do when they just have the right community, the right supports, and especially that they're new teachers. Like
right.
As Jeff mentioned, we have all of our senior fellows as well, but starting out we're looking at early career teachers and really empowering them to be able to take on these roles. And then it's been really fun to watch everyone, grow over that time and step into some of those bigger kind of ideas and roles and just be able to be in the background as a support for them doing that, and watching those communities grow. And like Jeff said, that, when we get to connect some folks together, right? Like, they don't really know each other well, but you're doing some stuff, and let's get you connected and give you the support to make that happen. And that's really cool and really special.
Well, and Jeff, you talked about when early in your career that you got shoulder tapped to do a couple things, right? It feels like Knowles especially the fellows program, is a place where that. What happens if you see someone that say, hey, I'm going to shoulder tap them because I see that they could take on this opportunity to take on this little leadership role or whatever. And all of a sudden now, hey, let's put them together, right? And then let's equip them, empower them, give them the tools that they need in the network possibly to do incredible things. Again, seeing that teachers are the answer about improving what we're trying to do here in math and science classrooms.
Yeah, I think that it's an interesting way to think about it. Mm-hmm. It's like in some ways our program is just it's a lot of shoulder taps, right? I think that's sort of what happens, and we've heard fellows tell us this, is that for some it is being recognized, right? Like, it's unfortunately for too many teachers, choosing to go into teaching was not the most prestigious path they could take. It may not be the one that made their families the happiest or any of those sorts of things. And so from very early on, getting recognized as a Knowles Fellow, as a potential leader, and then the program Jen leads, and our staff is all about sort of finding potential in each of these fellows and tapping them and equipping them and providing resources and mentors to remind them that they are leaders, right? That they can do this, that they can have that kind of impact. And so I think is a really, it's powerful to be reminded of that regularly, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. So you had a chance, speaking of the Teaching Fellows program, you had a chance to do something that's kind of unique, where you had a chance to take a pause and rethink. And so talk about this idea of the pause about with the Teaching Fellows program, like what went into that and like the design of it. Cause I think that's one thing I'm always impressed with, Knowles, is about how you design and execute things. And I'm just excited. Can you talk about it?
Yeah, I'll talk about why we get into it, and then Jen can describe a little bit of what she and her team designed. We've been at this 25 years, and we started with our first teaching fellows in 2002, and for sure, the program has changed an enormous amount over that time. But it's been incremental change. And it's the kind of change that you're able to make. We often talk about, building the plane while you're flying it. And it's that kind of change that we've made, is that it's the kind of change that happens while you are also doing everything you can to run a really good program for teachers. And in 2021, in 2022, as we were coming out of the pandemic, we were hearing from fellows, we were reading reports from the field, we were talking with our colleagues in higher ed and other places who were doing this work. And there was a real recognition that maybe something incremental hadn't happened, right? That this wasn't an incremental shift in what it was like to be a teacher. And in having those conversations about what our response would be, we got to a place where it felt like this is a time to really do some reflection on our own work that we've done in the past, but also to make sure we were hearing what was going on with teachers and listening to others who were leading in the field to figure out if there were changes we could make to the program that would serve the next 20 to 25 cohorts of fellows that we supported, as well as we'd supported the last 20 to 25. And that was really our goal, was to make sure that our support could continue to be the kind of shoulder taps that we needed it to be for the next generation of teachers who were teaching in a different context than I was in the 90s, right? Just thinking about like the role when our program was started. And again, we had made a lot of changes, and we are an organization that prides itself on learning and making changes. But when you're in the midst of it, it's hard to do.
Yeah.
And so what the pause was for us was a year where we weren't going to admit a new cohort. So we don't have a 2025 cohort coming in this summer, as we've had for the last 23 years. But in the meantime, it gave us sort of a 2-year window where we could really look into what was going on and design a new program, even while we're still supporting, the 24s.
Yeah, it's not a true pause. You're still
not a true
work.
pause. Yeah, we're still running. We still served 1,000 teachers in our Knowles Academy this year. But it meant we weren't investing in bringing in a new cohort, which is a really intensive process for us. Mm-hmm. And it meant that we weren't recruiting, and it meant that we had some resources to invest in this investigation that we had to look into this kind of work. And so that was the impetus for it, was a chance to stop, reflect, learn from what we'd done in the past, and learn from others, and come out of it confident that what we're designing and what we're doing and the new program was going to serve teachers going forward.
So what went in? I mean, and I got a chance to be a part of a couple of things, but
yeah, you did.
So like the design. I mean, so then thinking about, okay, so we're going to take a pause with recruiting a new cohort. So then, okay, you got time, you got some research. So then how do we think about what are we going to do? And so, Jen, I don't know if you want to start there with so what did the pause look like? I mean, you had so much so describe the pause.
Sure. So Jeff, and shout out to Joyce Lynn. She's our other colleague.
Yes.
She and I, the three of us kind of spearheaded this team of trying to figure this out. Like, what does this now mean for us, and how do we do that? And we knew we wanted to get different perspectives into the conversation and bring those in. And so we were thinking about how to do that. And really, there were a couple big, broad questions that we were trying to address. As Jeff said, like coming out of the pandemic, trying to understand how has education shifted? So we were really trying to understand some of the challenges and problems that were facing the educational system today. What are the needs, some of the greatest unmet needs of our students today? And kind of given all that, what do high school math and science teachers need to both stay in this environment, which has always been something we've looked at, as well as lead from the classroom in this current environment. And then once we had that, trying to figure out what were some of the strategies that would benefit students and teachers in the long run. So those questions were kind of guiding what we were doing. And so again, we knew we wanted to have different perspectives. So we wound up coming up with a plan where we had kind of a 3-tier approach. We first hosted, and you participated in some of the round tables.
Yep.
That we called them a round table discussion. And these were with what we called our friends of Knowles, people who knew us. So folks who had been selection advisors for us in the past or had served as mentor teachers, people who worked with fellows in different ways. So they knew about us, knew about our mission, and had been involved in the program in some way. And we wanted to get their perspective in that way. So that was kind of our first approach, and then lots of data from there. But then we also wanted to make sure that we had outside perspectives, people who didn't really know us, maybe had heard of us, hopefully, but they hadn't worked with us in some way. And so we did a 1.5-day meeting in our office, a panel meeting in our office. And we brought in people who were experts in education in some way, some who are in teacher education, some superintendents. We brought in teachers. We brought in folks who were involved with policy, just to give us a wide variety. We thought about geography, those who might be, kind of in the less traditional teacher prep, but still working in teacher prep. We thought about identity of the panels. So we tried to bring in a nice, diverse group of folks who could give us kind of that like outsider perspective and bring in some ideas of what was happening in the field. And then, of course, we wanted to go to the experts in the fellowship. We wanted to, and in teaching, we wanted to talk to our fellows as well. And they know us best. They love us. And as a result, they're also very happy to give us feedback, both things that were working really well and they appreciated, things where they could see, hey, this is what's happening now, and this is what we think that, we could strengthen in the fellowship or some things from there. So we had a couple meetings with fellows in some different ways and gave opportunity for fellows and teaching fellows and senior fellows, so all of the fellows, to give us input into those same questions. So those broader questions that I mentioned earlier kind of guided everything that we did from there. And that took almost a year to get all of that. By the time we planned it, ran the roundtables, it was in the winter, early spring of 2023, 2024, then we had the panel in spring of 2024 and continued to gather data from the fellows through the end of that summer.
So I'm putting on my dissertation chair hat because I'm trying to get a few people across the finish line as we're heading into summer. And and maybe Peg Smith might say the same thing. Like, that sounds like a lot of data.
Funny you mentioned dissertation, because Jeff and I were joking. That's exactly what it felt like we were back doing.
That's what I'm like. Okay, you got your research questions. We've got our we've got some focus groups. We've got a panel, and I remember. I mean, I was at the panel meeting, and there wasn't a Post-it. There wasn't a Post-it that wasn't taken document, like careful, like, all right, this is now data. We're going to make sure it's over here so we can process it. And so like, how did you go about processing the data, and like, I guess not getting overwhelmed with that, but then moving, I guess maybe you said, talking about these tiers from like the round tables to the panel to even talking to fellows, like, what was the process of trying to, like, what did we learn here? Like, I just, it sounds I'm getting overwhelmed just thinking about it.
Yeah. I mean, we do love data. So we definitely had a lot. So yeah. And we use data from the roundtables to help inform, like, make sure that we were going to hit the right ideas, the right targets, the right, and leave for the panels, and also leave space for new things to emerge during those discussions. And so I think it was a lot of, especially after the roundtables, Joyce and Jeff and I reading the transcripts independently, coming up with themes, coming together, talking about them, going back to that. So there's a lot of, that kind of qualitative analysis and getting back into that. And then you're right, from the panels, we had the whole program staff was there and like really facilitated small group conversations well. We had note-taking documents where we were capturing notes. We had posters and Post-its, and those all got photographed and transcribed, and very much the same thing, like looking across themes, having discussions. But we had even like during the panel, we would meet. So Jeff and Joyce and I would meet after to kind of say, like, this is what's coming up for us now, what we're hearing, and just kind of capturing that. And then, afterwards, same thing, like reading through everything, looking for what are the themes, what are new themes that are emerging from this that didn't come up from the roundtable discussions, and feeding that back to the staff who were there. Like, does this seem right from you facilitated this group? Does this seem to capture in that way? And then similar with the fellows, like we recorded everything. So we had the transcripts and just adding in the ideas that they were raising and from conversations we had as well.
So
go ahead, Jeff.
Just going to say through that, I do think, what kind of happens like it did in, or does in a lot of qualitative research is, you would, at almost every step along the way, we would see some of the same issues popping up. The things that were in the roundtable, we saw again in the panel, and it sort of deepened it and rounded it out. And then a new issue would pop up as well. Mm-hmm. Right. So that was kind of a lot of the process was like, when we would talk to fellows, maybe, 30 or 40 minutes of the conversation with fellows might feel like a hitting on those same themes, and then something new would emerge. And then that new emergence would be a thing that we would often then follow up on, ask more questions about, question our assumptions on. So it really did feel a lot like like we were undergoing a large qualitative study with a lot of data and a lot of theme building.
Your emergent themes, you're achieving saturation. Oh my gosh. So it writes
For
itself.
Sure.
Right?
For sure.
So I mean, then the exciting part is, well, what did you learn? Right. And what did you learn? And that's, like when I think about the amount of data, the amount of time, the amount of thoughtfulness, you keep going back to like the sampling, like of who you're talking to. Like, what did you learn?
Jeff, you want to start?
Yeah, sure. I'll start. I think some of the things we might have predicted, just to name that, like, I think some of the things we were, that even led us into the study, were some of the things that we thought. So I'll name one, which was, it was just abundantly clear. And again, as Jen said, this is 23, 24, where we're collecting this data, that the pandemic might have been over as a health emergency, but it had not stopped its impact on students and, as a consequence, on teachers and what their jobs were, what was asked of them, and what they confronted on a daily basis. And so we heard a lot about the ways in which the pandemic had legs in terms of what its impact was on schools. And I think we can talk about some of the sort of lessons for that. around it, like what the application is in our new fellowship. But that was just really clear that was the case. And I'll talk about it. The sort of second related one, I think, is that the other thing we heard, and this came from our veteran teachers. Like there are a couple key conversations where we talked about where I felt like I could feel myself identifying with teachers who had been in the classroom in the 90s when I was there, talking about the enormous shift in the role and status of the teaching profession over the past 20 years. That what Harry and Janet often would put their finger on was Harry in particular, our founder who passed away in 2020, prior to the pandemic. He would talk about how much he just valued teachers and how smart and giving he found teachers, and that it bothered him that the teachers weren't held in the same esteem as the engineers that he would wine and dine when he was recruiting for his company and this kind of thing. And what we were hearing from teachers and what we were seeing, and it would see the consequence of it in our fellows, is that had gotten tougher. That what it felt like to be a teacher, the sort of level of esteem that society holds it in, the way you're financially compensated, that is a bigger hurdle for teachers now than it had been in the past. And so that gave us a lot to think about as well when we were thinking about design is, what does it look like for us to lift up a teaching profession that for many teachers at least felt like it was losing ground in terms of how people viewed it. And obviously, Joel, your podcast and the kinds of work you're doing is you're also reacting to that same kind of thing, right? Of trying to lift teachers up and to promote a different voice about what teachers might mean. So those were two big themes that I saw. Jen, certainly we had some others that, if you want to talk about those.
Sure. I think one that was interesting for me that really came up, that again is not surprising, is the political polarization in education and the role that policies play in that, and that they can have be supportive for teachers or can be detrimental on teachers in classrooms, and that's one for me that is again, as I said, not really surprising, but I've seen feel like that has changed a lot over time, and I see that outside of my Knowles work. I'm also on our local school board, and so I'm just thinking a lot about policies and seeing the ways that those can play out, and policies at all levels, right, from the district level up through national policies and state level policies and such. And that came up a lot, I think, across all of the conversations we had in ways that had never really come up prior in that same sustained, no matter who you were talking to, this was something that came up. So I think that was another just kind of learning. Yeah,
Jen, on that, something that struck me was, I think depending on who you are, I think certainly some teachers have always viewed sort of teaching as a political act, and certainly people have written about that. Yeah. But I think what was clear, like what Jen was talking about, is that it had shifted from that, from some people who might view their work that way, or you might see some, to where it was an unavoidable presence in the teaching and learning environment in a way that's what felt really different. And that, just as Jen said, that's not something that we, had necessarily, certainly wasn't in our design, in early 2000s around what our practice meant.
Yeah. So these things are the things, and so even just these learnings that you've listed, and if those are not part of what we're trying to take on, then there's a need for some larger changes.
And then I'll say one other that I would want to mention is, and we heard this from our superintendents, from our folks who work in higher ed, some of our policy kinds of work, is that recruiting and retaining teachers for schools and districts has gotten much harder. And it's gotten harder in what are probably pretty predictable ways, which is that, in less well-resourced schools and districts in less well-resourced states are feeling the brunt of that in particular. Yeah. And so, some of our school district personnel were just describing, crises in terms of teacher retention and teacher recruitment. And that certainly has always been important to us, but also brought some urgency to the work for us.
Yeah. Well, and especially in the areas that you care about, math and science, right?
Yep.
I know about I just got an email the other day just saying, hey, we need one. You got one?
Yeah,
we
right.
need one. Yeah.
Ole Miss, send us a teacher, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So then, all right, so now learnings lead to action, right? So how did you translate? Okay, so now we have this. All right, we've got our, this was a dissertation. Hey, here's your recommendations for practice, but no, you actually have to go put it into action. So now, what does that look like?
I mean, I'll just say I'm going to let Jen talk about this, but Jen, this is Jen's day job right now. I mean, this is that work we're doing. We are. That's right. So I think the wrap up of the dissertation that we're talking about, of sort of pulling out the themes with all the sort of stories and evidence that are fresh in our mind. It is her team now. We are in the midst of that work of translating that into the nitty gritty details of our new fellowship. What is the benefit structure going to look like, and how are we going to get money and resources into the hands of teachers in ways that best support them? Those are questions. When we bring fellows together, what are they going to do? What are our staff going to lead them in? What kinds of work are they going to do? Those are the big questions. But I'll certainly let Jen, talk about some of the big changes that we've made around that.
Before we do that, real quick, this is off the cuff. If this was a dissertation, what would be the title?
Well, it'd definitely be something serious, colon.
Yeah. I heard something that I think it was Jeff said was it's like defining the challenge of lifting up the teaching profession. You probably have to put science and math teachers in there.
Yeah, something in there.
Yeah. But I mean, it seems like, again, you did something that was impressive. I feel like you talk about there is that, if the plane's always flying, you can't change out the engine, right?
Yep.
And so you had a chance to land the plane, at least for a cohort, and do something. And so it's, I don't know, it's sometimes where you to make that. I mean, that was a brave decision, right? Because when you're not doing that, you're not recruiting. You think, are we going to miss out? Well, in the design of the fellowship, you'll talk about, you'd still get a chance. Those people still get a chance to apply.
Correct.
But, I mean, there's a fear that, and the fact is that you took a brave step to do that. And so I just also want to say thanks for. I mean, that's another reason to have this conversation. It was a brave thing to do. You learned something from it. You're sharing it here. Thank you. But yeah, so then how does that translate into action? Unless somebody just came up with an awesome title for the dissertation.
I don't have one yet, Jen.
I'm going to work on it though, Joel.
Yeah,
that's
right. You can add it to the show notes.
That's right.
Or people can suggest it.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, that's a good idea.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think, the first thing is from there, trying to think about, okay, so all the learnings that we had that came out of there, how does that translate? What does that mean for us into the action that we need to take? And so a few kind of things that came out of there is we knew we were going to need more mentoring and coaching for teachers to help make that sustainable, especially in the early years of teaching. We knew that even more community focus would be something that being in community with other teachers was really important. And as Jeff said, thinking about that financial support, what does that look like? How do we think about that? How do we think about supporting teachers to engage with and influence policy at different levels? and, supporting all of their students. And so these are kind of some of the big things that we were trying to think about. And, briefly describing that process again, Jeff and Joyce and I over the last number of months have continued looking at the data and putting things in place. Okay, well, what if we do this? And then what if we do this? And I try and getting feedback along the way and trying to really think about what that structure can look like. And so, in the end, I am super excited I am so thrilled that we had a chance to take that break and to be able to really put this level of thinking in, because I think our current fellowship program is amazing. And I am super excited for the redesign, because I do think it's going to really support teachers now moving forward and in that way. And knowing that, so we have a 4-year fellowship now, and knowing that after that 4 years, they're going to be able to continue on with support. The senior fellowship is huge. And so a couple kind of key areas that we focus on, community has always been a big part of our work. But we are adding in even more, thinking about the more types of communities. So continuing with our cohort community, our national community, we're going to be adding in a regional component and really focusing on to allow for some conversations within regions to happen. We'll be offering different kind of community connection grants. So to be able to let some communities emerge organically from the fellows, that we can then support those. And that could be something that is content-based or identity-based or school-based, and trying to fund ways to recognize, hey, we have these specific communities and there will be more that you will need. And so being able to be flexible in that and having the financial support for that, I think was a big thing. And with the coaching and mentoring, we are going to have a heavier focus in the first 2 years of our fellowship now, where we will have more current veteran teachers. So we call them teacher leader mentors, who work with our fellows. We're going to have more of them that will be working with fellows. And the great thing about teacher leader mentors is they're still practicing teachers. So they are in the day-to-day with the fellows in a way that our staff isn't. We are all former teachers, but as you've heard, I haven't been in the classroom in more than 19 years. It's really rough, the number that I can say there. So we'll just say more than 20 years. And so given everything and knowing that teaching is different now, having them see veteran teachers who are in it day to day with them is really important, especially in those first couple years of teaching. So we're going to have a heavier focus there. And, one of the things I'm really excited about is we're going to be thinking about a systems approach, from the beginning of the fellowship. And that will kind of frame a lot of what we're doing, thinking about, what does influence what's happening in your classroom? And then understanding all of that. And then, so how can you influence back out? What does that look like in these different ways? So, our first 2 years of the fellowship are really going to focus on thinking about equitable instruction in your classroom. And what does that look like? And understanding those influences and where you can kind of influence out. And then years 3 and 4, we'll build on that and say, okay, so now how are you going to lead for change in your school or in your district or region or whatever that might be? And there'll be there'll be leadership support in there. Those fellows will have leadership coaches. And so pretty exciting in that way.
Yeah, that's systems. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Jeff.
I was saying one other thing I think is exciting is that because of some of the changes that we've made, we have shifted it from 5 to 4 years. We're actually able to support more teachers, right? So we're actually able to, have more fellows on each year come into the cohorts, which is also just something that we're really excited about.
Yeah, that was one of those things. Being on the program committee and offering that, I think that was thrown out, could we get more? And all of a sudden you come back, wow, more teachers. It was a good math problem.
Yeah.
Good job. Yeah,
it was.
And so, what I love about this again, having a conversation like this where you get to share some of these things where people get to hear, you've learned a lot. You're very systematic in thinking about this and thinking about the more mentoring and coaching, the policy, the financial support, and then thinking about, okay, so what did that action look like? more community, those community connection grants. So just a little bit of funding that can support those sorts of interactions that can happen. And then the coaching and mentoring, not, from folks that are right in it, right with them. And I think that there's things that, where people that are sending me emails, wanting teachers, like thinking about well, what do you have in place to obviously can't mimic exactly what you do, but are you thinking holistically about what are we doing to support our teacher? What are we doing to support community? What are we doing to help making sure they have access to coaching and mentoring? If this is something that we want to enact change within our own organizations. But then also too, knowing that Knowles is out there and the things that you're doing as well with regards to professional development are things that everyone can access as well. But then also too, getting able to access this learnings that you've had is kind of a nice gift. So again, thank you for sharing it. So if you going away, and maybe you've already said it, but I just want to know, what would you want listeners of this podcast to know about teaching better or supporting the improvement of teaching? Well, if there was one thing from all the stuff that we've talked about, what is one thing you'd want listeners to walk away with?
I think for me, for sure, Knowles is a community that I'm really proud of, that I think we build community well and we do well. But one of the things we just hear as we talk with teachers, as we work with teachers in our academy, as we heard through all of this work, is that nearly all the good stuff in teaching comes in community. It is in isolation, it's maybe becoming an increasingly difficult job and profession. Certainly people, as I did, and as I'm sure you did, find joy with your students, but it is isolating, and can be isolating, and maybe is increasingly isolated. But the good stuff, the joy, the learning, the renewal, the rest, even a lot of that comes through community. And so I think for me, the lesson is if you're a teacher or you're somebody who works with teachers, it's how can you build good communities? And if you're a teacher, where can you find your people? Maybe how do you even have a hand in creating that in your school, to sort of build some of that community? Because that really is often what leads to retention and teachers staying and finding joy. And so I don't know, I don't know in 1999, in our original vision, I think how much that was there. But over time and through this process for us, it's just a really clear focusing for us is this is the thing that we make available to teachers, is a community where they can learn and grow and be supported. And we're really leaning into that. And I think it's the thing that teachers need to grow.
Awesome. What about you, Jen?
I agree. And I'll build a little bit, take a spin on that with what Jeff said. I think all the teachers we've talked to, through whether they're our fellows or teachers who are at our panels and such, they're just so amazing and so inspiring and inspired and really love this work. And so when you put them together in these communities, great things happen. And yes, Knowles Fellows have the privilege of having this particular community with some different kind of supports, but it's really, there's a quote that we start some of our PDs with, and I'm not going to get the quote right, but the essence of it is, teachers need support. They don't need us to do the work for them, but they just need the support. And I see that over and over again. And I think the community is, as Jeff was saying, is that support. And so finding ways to create that community, because teachers, they're the experts in what's happening in their classroom, and believing them and supporting them together to do that and think about their teaching it's amazing to be a part of and to watch. And I'm really excited at the ways we're adding even more community opportunities to do that.
Yeah, this has been a great conversation. I mean, I'm even thinking about something I do in my methods classroom, and like we're trying to come up with what's the secret. We're doing our own little project, like what's the secret sauce. And I think some of it is they're doing like we are creating little groups, little PLCs that they're doing, and it's just like and that right there might be some of the magic that's happening. Uh, so yeah, the good stuff happens in community, and so I am I'm glad to be in community with you all. I got one question, a fun one for you. Thank you, Jeff. A fun one for you, and I threw it out there, and maybe you had a chance to think about it. One album. My midlife crisis was buying a record player and buying a bunch of records, and so I like thinking about albums like vinyl. And so I'm just curious: is there any album like? Think about it from beginning to end that you just love to listen to? It could be from now, it could be from way back when, it could be from 19 years ago, whatever, you know. Is there anything that pops in your mind?
Sure, I can get this started. Honestly, when the first one that popped into my mind is any Billy Joel live album. I fell in love with Billy Joel in high school, saw him in concert a number of times. It is a go-to on the weekends for my wife and I when we're like doing some like stuff around the house or something. So it just always gets me pumped up. I know all the words. I love to sing to it. So, but any one of his live albums, because they're just so full of energy, and I love that. So.
One of the favorite podcast episodes I love listening to is one with Alec Baldwin's "Here's the Thing." He interviews Billy Joel, and and he's interviewing him at a piano. So he's like playing songs. It's the best. I'll put a link in the show notes to it. But
I love that.
Great one. All right, Jeff, what about you?
So I think in the last 10 years, I kind of stopped listening to new music. It was one of those things where, you know, you kind of get locked in. Like, here's the things I liked. Yeah. But we list, you know, both my daughters, you know, they love music, and it was a big part of their childhood. All my bands, you know, the Killers and all these folks that they grew up listening to. And then this past year, my daughter's now in college, and she sent me an album. It's just like a way to a dad's heart of like, hey, Dad, here's this new band. I think you'll really like them. I really love them. And then it's become my go-to album, which is Fontaine's DC Skintifia. And it's an incredible album. I mean, just start to finish, it's amazing. And she's right. And I know why she says I would like it. It's like got all the kind of harkens back to the sort of 90s, 2000 sort of punk grunge. And man, it's great. And it also is special because she sent it my way. So that's even better. Awesome. Yeah. And so I know we have thank you for doing that. That's awesome. I'd love to look some stuff up now. Yeah.
The last thing is like, I know we have things about, and being on the board, I know some of them too. We can go to the website, right? And we'll put a link to where people can go to when the application is open, that they'll know if they have an early career teacher that's going to be teaching in fall in the classroom, fall of 2026, and they'll be in their first 3 years. Am I right?
Yep. So if they're a first, second, or third year high school math or science teacher in the fall of 26, so that would mean right now if they are student teaching or first year teacher this spring, that's the group. Or anybody who might be starting in a program this summer and wrapping up, that's the group. And our application will open, I mean, any day at this point now. We're about down to that. But even if you go to our website now, you can give us all your information and you'll know. And that's the thing where for sure, that's the thing we really want people to know, is that if you're thinking about if you've got somebody, if somebody's crossing your mind of like, man, I know somebody who could use the support, or I'm one of those teachers, we really recommend that you send them our way. And like there's a very good chance that if they reach out, I mean, they're going to talk to Jen or me or Cassie here in our office. It's not like we're some big organization. We're a little family foundation that runs this, and you'll get taken care of well through this process. And it is competitive, but we'll respect you as you go through this, and it won't be onerous.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'll put a link to the Knowles Academy too, and some of the professional development courses.
Yeah.
And also, you all are a great LinkedIn follow as well because of all the great stuff that's happening. It's just either through the fellows or through what you all are doing. It's it's good stuff out there. So I can put anything else that we should share.
Well, I think that's great.
Awesome.
Great.
Thank you so much for sharing your time. I appreciate it.
Yeah, Joel, I appreciate it. Thanks for letting us do it.
That was great. Thank you.
All right, there's my conversation with Jeff and Jen. You're going to want to head to the show notes, amazonplanet.com/episode 124. Access to all the different links that we talked about, especially if you know an early career science or math high school teacher. You're going to want to get them involved in that, at least become aware of Knowles. There's free professional development there. Again, lots of links. Head to amazonplanet.com/episode 124. Also, there's to be some links to some episodes from other Knowles folks there, from Josh Thurby. He was a guest on the Teaching Math Teaching podcast, along with Ayanna Perry and Gina Wilson. We're also on the latest edition of the Teaching Math Teaching podcast. They're doing some good stuff. What's cool is Ayanna is also a previous guest on Amazon Planet, where she talked about her 5 to Thrive book with co-author Fred Dillon. And kind of exciting is Ayanna Perry, Dr. Ayanna Perry, is now a NCTM board member elect. So just Knowles has got some great people involved with it. I'm excited for you to. I'm excited that you heard this episode, and go to the show notes where you can get access to more links to Knowles content. All right, and now the album of the episode, where I share an album I've been listening to as a way to connect with you. But let's be honest, it's just an excuse to talk about music. Glad that Jeff and Jen shared their selections during our conversation. My selection this week is Garth Brooks' "In Pieces." You might know it as, it's got like the red checkerboard, red and black checkerboard with his name in boxes, kind of like a crossword puzzle. He's kind of sitting. He's got his hand up by his face. It's always got Garth's face on the cover. Come on now. There's songs like "Ain't Going Down Till the Sun Comes Up," American Honky Tonk Bar Association, his rendition of "Callin' Baton Rouge," the song "Standing Outside the Fire," which had a pretty epic music video to go along with it. Anyway, the reason why I'm calling this up is this was my first CD I had. It was a teenager. One of the gifts I got for either birthday or Christmas was the big boombox CD player. It might have had a remote. I can't quite remember, but it was like digital face that had like things you put the CD in it, and you could like do, shuffle songs on the day, or you could play it straight through, or you could, play one song over and over again. It was like this first CD in this boombox was kind of like more taking control of my playlist, I guess. Like you'd have like the constant, trying to record your favorite songs off the radio, and I had tapes, but CDs felt like a little bit more control, right? Tapes were a little bit more control. CDs got to be a little bit more control. Then you knew, there's someone that had a CD-ROM or CD burner that you could make your own, CD, mixtape, but it was a CD that you could then, play specific songs on. And then, the evolution goes from there, right? You get Columbia House Records, now you get, like 16 CDs for a penny, and then you have to cancel before you get charged the $20 for the next CD. And then we get iTunes with an iPod, and now I've got Spotify, where I can basically play any song that I want. And it's weird because now we're going back, and I, just recently bought a box set of Garth Brooks records where I got the album Garth Brooks in Pieces that started it all back in the day. And I just think it's kind of weird. Like the more we got control, the more we're like, you know what? There's something about handing control over to an artist like Garth Brooks. This was my first Garth Brooks album, and I was kind of late to the game about learning about Garth Brooks. And, is he my favorite artist to listen to? No, but like when I play it, I can just transport myself back to my bedroom at 503 11th Street West in Altoona, Wisconsin, just a block away from the park, and think about who I was back then and playing basketball at the park till it got so dark that we had to go home, or else we're going to get injured by the basketball hitting us in the face. and then going back to my room, hitting play on my CD player. So, little bit of blast from the past. Thank you for indulging me. That's going to wrap it up for this visit to Amidon Planet. Show notes are available at amidonplanet.com/episode 124. If you'd like to support the podcast, you can subscribe, rate, review, and share this episode to help others find this content. You can also subscribe to the email list to receive the Amidon Planet dispatch for teaching resources and updates from Amidon Planet. And we've been doing a good job of sending those out every month. And right now, we'll be talking about NOLS. We've got the Mississippi Association of Mathematics Teacher Educators has a virtual symposium coming up. Have other podcast episodes from the Teaching Math Teaching podcast. There's also some early career teacher opportunities from MTEP, which will be on that. Anyway, if you want to find that out, go ahead, sign up on the email list, and you'll get the Amidon Planet dispatch sent to your inbox just about every month with resources for learning how to teach better and updates from Amidon Planet. Want to engage further? Hey, submit a question, comment, or suggestion to the mailbag by sending an email to joel@amidonplanet.com. Lastly, I'm always looking to collaborate with those leading others to love through teaching. If you have an event or opportunity, email me at joel@amidonplanet.com or visit amidonplanet.com /about to fill out the request a call form. Thank you for spending time on Amidon Planet. Thanks to Jeff and Jen for sharing their time and expertise, not only to this podcast episode, but to the Knowles Teacher Initiative. Thanks to Matt Mifflin for the music in this episode. And finally, thank you to all of you out there learning to teach better and be the good in the world by investing in the lives of others. This world is a better place because you have decided to use the gifts you've been given to serve others. Thank you for all that you do. Peace.